Welcome back to the Horses Now podcast, your go-to source for everything in the world of horse racing. Kenny McPeek once again joins me in studio. Kenny, how we doing?
Doing super.
All right, Kenny, here's what I want to dive in today. So Thorpedo Anna has a really good shot of Horse of the Year. So I want to dive in a little bit kind of deeper here on what it takes to be the Horse of the Year, how the point system works, and get your feelings on where you think you stand. Have you had a horse that's won Horse of the Year?
Well, I purchased a Horse of the Year in Curlin.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he didn't win it when you were necessarily training him?
I never handled him as a trainer.
So you had Curlin later in his...
I bought him as a yearling.
Oh, as a yearling.
Placed him with a client.
Okay.
This is back in 2005.
Got it.
And then subsequently, he was first start with Helen Pitts.
Yep.
And then Steve Asmussen trained to 2 Horses of the Year.
2 Horses of the Year.
Yeah. No, it was great to watch.
How often does that happen?
I was a little bit. I wished I'd trained that one, but it worked out okay. I mean, he was a fantastic horse. But yeah, this would be the 2nd Horse of the Year I bought.
Okay, so this is kind of a silly question, but I think for our listeners, maybe we can line it out a little bit. How do the points get assigned, and what are the key races trainers aim for to boost their horses' rankings?
Well, from what I understand, there are 3 different organizations that vote on Horse of the Year.
Okay.
And honestly, I don't know how the points are done.
Got it.
We probably have to get somebody else out here. From what I
understand, and maybe I can find a graphic that kind of puts it all together for us. But
DRF, the Turf Riders, and then one other group. And forgive me for not knowing, but I've not been in this position. So
hey, yeah, you'll know after this. How do you feel about Thorpedo Anna potentially being that horse?
Well, I think that we're really proud of the work she did this year. I mean, she's done everything we've asked her to do, and she was just amazing. I think that what might push her over as a serious candidate Horse of the Year would be the fact that we ran her in the Travers and didn't have to.
Yeah.
And she performed so
did
well.
Great.
Yeah. And we really could have taken the easy route and won the Alabama. But I think it really lifted racing for the summer. I think people enjoyed it. I think the spotlight was definitely on her. And I think through the whole year, she definitely carried a pretty bright torch.
Sierra Leone, I guess, was probably another horse in that conversation.
Great horse. He didn't win that much this year, but he won the right one. And he ran huge Breeders' Cup Classic, and Chad did a great job with him. But like somebody said, I mean, would you vote for him over her? I said, actually, she beat him. He was 3rd in the Travers.
Interesting.
She was 2nd. And she beat him pretty handily that day.
That's right.
Maybe 2nd to Fierceness. And then Fierceness is probably the other main contender. And, he had a great year other than maybe his Kentucky Derby run.
Right.
He didn't do much wrong.
Right.
I mean, but I think Thorpedo, certainly a girl taking on the boys and all the...
It's a cool story.
I think the positive energy she brought to the sport for the year, and the fact that she was a bit of an underdog purchase, and she really... I think she made a lot of fans.
And that's where you excel, right? It's kind of the underdog purchase piece. I mean, that's what you do. You've said that several times.
Yeah. Well, that's my mom would say, work hard for those that want you, and don't worry about those that don't. And I've got a long list of people that have given me, in some cases a nice budget, in some cases a modest.
Right.
And I just have done the best I could with whatever I got.
What's the impact of Horse of the Year as far as her value, her future prospects? Does it influence breeding or even kind of future running? Well,
certainly it's a very distinguished award. How would it affect her value? I think anytime you look at her catalog page, you're gonna get that. You're gonna see that. At the same time, the value is really going to be determined if 2 people, the more they bid at an auction.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't see any notion that we're intending on selling her anytime soon.
Good.
And so that really isn't going to affect us financially, and maybe next year we'd consider that. But I think the partnership might be inclined to keep her as a broodmare. And then when you sell her foals, you take her foals to auction. They're going to announce this foal's by a certain stallion out of Horse of the Year Thorpedo Anna. So I think
so that helps a little bit there.
A little bit of a push there. But once again, a horse like that sold at auction, it takes 2 people bidding to really want that horse, and what they're going to probably be looking at the horse more as an individual,
Right.
than they would as what the catalog page.
Okay,
is.
fair enough. All right, so we're approaching winter here. We're basically in winter now. What are some key changes in routine for trainers?
Well, after Thanksgiving or the Thanksgiving weekend, we gear down a little bit.
Okay.
We've been going hard all year long. It's kind of take a little bit of a deep breath. I really like December in the sense that, well, I distribute the horses to where they're going to be for the winter. A group's gone to fairgrounds already. A group's gone to Oaklawn. We've got horses in Florida already. We've got a big group up here that we're going to have to migrate south as well. So a lot of the logistics of all that, my truck drivers, they're already on the road. And then we don't race really hard during December, January, February. Now, since Oaklawn is open to December meet, we're going to run some there. We're going to run some in Florida and Louisiana.
Okay.
But our big hitters, Thorpedo's on the farm in Lexington getting a little rest, and she's already putting on weight. She looks great.
Awesome.
Mystic Dan's in Louisiana right now at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
And he's in a Saturday work routine. And so now we're just trying to get through this end of November. I've got some really nice horses running the end of the month. And then on the other side of that, then we'll, I'm not going to say stop so much as slow down a little bit with the bigger ones, and then when spring comes, you'll start seeing them surface again.
I have another question on that, but I want to derail here to Mystic Dan for a second. Why the fairgrounds? What's the idea of having him there?
Well, as a 2-year-old, he started at Oaklawn. He trained at Oaklawn in December last year. Then the weather turned, and we shuffled him out of there and got him to New Orleans because it wasn't as cold. The track was good.
Yep.
And he got into a really nice routine in New Orleans, and he did really well there to the point where, he won his next race at Oaklawn.
Yep.
And he prepared for the Derby in New Orleans a good portion of the year.
Okay.
Even his race in the Arkansas.
So he likes New Orleans.
Yeah, he does. And a lot of horses, that's probably one of the best surfaces in America.
Got it.
Yeah. I wished, I wished Fairgrounds could get their purse structure higher, and I'm sure everybody there does. The racing secretary included. It would be a lot more motivation to run more there, but we have enough horses that we can distribute them around. But it's probably one of the greatest places to prepare a young horse during the winter anywhere in the world, and it's not too hot,
right? It's
not too cold. Track's very consistent. It's very kind, and they love racing down there.
All right, back to kind of the winter months. Do trainers have different strategies for conditioning horses during colder months? And how does climate or region impact the trainer's approach to the winter?
Okay, well, great question. When I was a young trainer, I based at Turfway Park, or actually what is now Turfway. It was called Latonia back then.
Okay.
And, wow, we had some just frigid cold days, and I don't believe in training horses under 25 degrees.
Under 25. I was going to ask if there's a lot of people that don't believe playing golf like under 45 degrees. So I was kind of curious.
Once horses are pretty fit, you'd be surprised on how they keep their fitness. And I do think that sometimes, even myself, we might overtrain them when we shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I had one winter at Turfway where we lost almost a month of training. Actually, it was still Latonia then. We lost a month of training, and it was frozen every day. I can remember coming in the morning, and we had the buckets were frozen solid every day. Then we had a mountain of ice buckets.
Mm-hmm.
And but yet, when you don't train hard during the winter, your horses do really well in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And if you train hard during the winter, especially in the cold weather, then your horses are going to suffer in the spring. And the other thing that you don't think about is that when they walk to the track and back, if they step on ice or they bruise feet, like you cannot go over cold, frozen ground during the winter. You better be very careful, especially if it's got stones in it.
Gotcha.
Because you'll come in the spring and then horses will pop abscesses from the bruises that are coming out. So those are things that I don't deal with today. because we typically go to warmer climates.
Right.
We will leave probably a few horses around Turfway Keeneland might run a little bit at Turfway in December, maybe some more in March, but you probably won't see us running much there in January and February. Oaklawn can freeze on occasion.
Okay.
And that one's a little bit tricky. Oaklawn is a great racetrack when it's dry or even sloppy, but when it freezes, that track's a little tricky in that you need to stay away from the tunnels, and because the old tunnels,
Sure.
Bridges freeze before roads.
Yep.
And so there's a couple of tunnels at Oaklawn that we're always very wary of, that when that track's frozen, and it only freezes about once every 3 years, 4 years. I mean, so that track's, they can have their fair share of winter.
How about Churchill?
Well, Churchill's shut down. They're closed by the end of the year and then don't reopen until middle of March.
So you don't have a choice. So you have to ship horses.
Well, when I started out, I can remember stabling at Churchill for an entire winter. And we didn't train but from 11 o'clock to 2 p.m. because you need time for the sunshine to hit the track.
Okay.
But it really doesn't make any sense. And today, Churchill doesn't stay open during the winter.
Interesting.
Yeah. They close.
Is that tough on trainers?
No, I mean, I think it's good. I think we need to get south and we need to, set up someplace else. I mean, some trainers go to Gulfstream, which we're going to send some horses to Gulfstream. Some go to Tampa. Some go to fairgrounds. Some go to training centers.
How do you decide where to send them? It sounds like there's all kinds of options.
I've stabled them all over the years trying this. Payson Park, another great place for a young horse to go, or even an older horse. Bill Mott, Christophe Clement, Chad Brown. They primarily base at Payson Park during the winter. I've spent several seasons stabled there. It didn't work for me.
Why?
It was very pricey.
Okay.
Very, very. I like having my running horses at the track. I like to have I decided to buy Silverleaf because the cost of being stabled at Payson was so crazy. I said, well, why don't I just own a property and pay a mortgage as opposed to paying stall rent?
Yeah.
So that's how I mathed that out.
Okay.
Yeah. And then some trainers go to Palm Meadows Training Center, which is in Boynton Beach.
Yep.
And there's Palm Beach Downs. This is where Todd Pletcher and George Weaver and some others go. I believe George is still there. Todd pretty much, I don't know why he hadn't bought it, but he
lives there.
He's got most all of his horses there.
Yeah.
He prepared Fierceness there. I'm sure a long list of really good horses have been through Palm Beach Downs.
That's fascinating.
Guys go different places. I mean, there's Ocala training centers. Mm-hmm. There's also South Carolina. Mm-hmm. You can go to Aiken, South Carolina, Camden. Mm-hmm. Those historically were probably the most prominent training centers back in the 60s and the 70s. Actually, probably 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
You haven't mentioned California much.
California's really not been my world other than stabling out there on occasion. But San Luis Rey is a base for a lot of the top horsemen out there. If I had to guess, I think Bob's got horses there. And Peter Miller, I know Peter Miller I saw years back there. I don't know if he still has horses there. Doug O'Neill.
Right.
The landscape's changed in California because of the closing of Hollywood Park.
Sure.
So that shuffled the deck pretty much.
Sure. No, that makes sense. All right. So the Kentucky Derby trials heat up after winter. How do you and other trainers start prepping for that this time of year? Anything specific that you look for in younger horses that they might be Derby ready?
Well, once they start stretching the distances out, we start seeing more mile and a 16th races as we get into fall and certainly into winter.
Yeah.
When you get a young horse that wins at a mile and a 16th, then you start getting excited. We've got Render Judgment who won at a mile and a 16th recently. And his plan is to run in the Kentucky Jockey Club, which is a really key Derby race.
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
Yeah, the Kentucky Jockey Club on the 30th of November is a great race for a lot of people out there to watch because whoever runs in that, typically that's the beginning of the stars of the spring. And that same race card is I don't know if they call it Stars of Tomorrow, but there are a lot of young horses that are going to participate on that particular race day that end up being high level. Swiss Skydiver ran on that race day. I'd give you a long list of nice horses that ran that day.
Anybody other than Rendering Judgment that you've got an eye on?
I've got a horse named Handsome Pants.
That's right. We talked about Handsome Pants.
that,
Yep.
but he came out of that race with a shin.
Yep.
He's gotten a little time off. I've got a New York bred named Mo Better Than Good, who won first time
It's a
out.
cool name.
Yeah, won first time out in New York.
Anything? So is it Mo Better?
M-O.
Does it?
It's
so
all one word.
now, does that have anything to do with the horse Uncle Mo?
Yes.
So that's how that works, right?
Yeah. He's a son of Motown.
Okay.
But Danny Ramsey, who some of you out there probably know, everybody says, "Hey, Danny, how you doing?" He always says, "I'm better than good."
Okay.
Yeah. And so one of the owners named this horse Mo Better Than Good.
Mo Better Than Good. All right.
The other star that I think you're going to see out of us is a horse named Maximum Promise,
Okay.
who broke his maiden by 14 at Ellis this summer, and unfortunately came out of the race with a little bit of a hint of a crack in a cannon bone, and actually a condylar, and we had to stop on him and gave him the time for it. And,
Got it.
but he's going to come back big and strong and bad.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
a
it.
good horse.
I know our listeners love when you kind of tease some of these horses too.
But I've got a list of young ones that haven't even run yet that are going to – I mean, I've got some fillies that are sitting on the shelf that our young horses this year have been what I'd call slow to come around.
Okay.
Yeah, actually last year, Anna and Dan didn't break their maidens until October.
Gotcha.
And so a lot can happen. And here we are in early November, and a lot can happen. So we got plenty of time.
All right, we're going to get to some questions now. We've had a few questions from our listeners that, so I'm going to kind of read some of these off. Kenny said that the Breeders' Cup will pay a shipping fee for the also entered. Mm-hmm. Would they not pay it if the horse did get entered?
No, there's a shipping allowance whether you
run or not.
Yeah, and Breeders' Cup we were not going to enter that horse if that wasn't covered.
Got it.
It didn't make any sense to go
financially
to fly him out, fly him back, and then. But they covered that, and that's a very generous. It's probably $10,000 total, but the budgets that they pull in on that weekend. I mean, I don't know how many horses they ship. They have a shipping allowance for horses from Europe that I believe is $40,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's a good incentive. The European Ascot and Epsom have been known to give you shipping allowances.
Interesting.
But they usually do that privately, not publicly.
So is that typical for large stake races or large allowance races at other tracks too, or that's just a Breeders' Cup thing?
North American tracks don't typically do that. The Breeders' Cup would be the strong exception, but for example, if I want to run a horse in Dubai or Saudi Arabia, which I've never run in Saudi, but I've run in Dubai a few times, they pay shipping expense.
Okay.
They'll ship a horse from South America to Dubai to run, give you a shipping allowance, and then you can ship it back to the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, we've done that several times with some South American purchases because they let a Southern Hemisphere horse run against a Northern Hemisphere, specifically the 3-year-olds. And when you do that, then you get the shipping allowance. So we're going to nominate to the UAE Derby this year and the Saudi Derby with some of our North American horses.
Okay. That's pretty cool. All right. So does Kenny think that some mares train their foals to act spirited and run? It goes on to say, didn't he own Thorpedo Anna's dam? And did he see the mare interact with Thorpedo at all?
Well, no. Well, no, I didn't.
You did not have?
No. Thorpedo Anna's mother did not race.
Okay.
And she was actually, Judy Hicks saved that filly or that mare. That filly, she was pretty much a giveaway because she was small and she wasn't very correct. But I do think that the mare's, back to the first question, the mare's influence over a young horse mentally is definite.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think if a mare is sassy, she teaches that foal to be sassy. If a mare might even be mean, I think foals get their traits definitely from their mother, but of course they're not around the sire,
right?
So they can't get it there,
right?
But I think the mare's influence is much more important than the stallion. Of course, a lot of stallion operators will go, wait a second, Kenny. But if you think about it, well, and this is how I've played the game for years. I look at the broodmare sire, because the broodmare sire, his influence on his daughters, and thus the daughter's influence over the foal. And I think that whether it's genetic or environmental, it passes through the mother. And not that the sire's not important, but the mother's much more important.
Gotcha.
And who the mother's father is and the mother's female family is. And I think the class and the substance of a lot of very good horses comes from the female. And I focus in on it when I'm reading a pedigree and looking at a horse.
Do you have a secret to how to pick a good broodmare?
Well, I would not pick I wouldn't own a broodmare unless she had two things.
Okay.
One, a fantastic hind leg.
Okay.
Because she's going to pass that to her foals. And two, you want her father or her female family to have some what I'd call, broodmare sire is important, because the way a horse is bred and how the pedigree comes through, and then how the genes are pushed to the foal, come from the mother's father. It's mother's father, and it's hard to explain that without maybe drawing a pedigree out. But I do think that there's something to that, and I was taught when I was young that important female or broodmare sires were horses like Prince Aquilo and Mahmoud and War Admiral, and they have I can't remember what gene, but the female gene comes through strong, and those same stallions don't really perform well on the sire line.
Got it.
And it's a different genetic profile that pushes through the sire than it does through the mother.
Interesting.
And it's artistic. You can't see it. You almost have to feel it. Like I look at Thorpedo Anna, and she's Uncle Mo. She's by her mother's by Uncle Mo, and she looks like an Uncle Mo. And yet Fast Anna was a Medaglia d'Oro, and for me, she doesn't look anything like a Medaglia d'Oro. So I'm looking at Uncle Mo when I'm looking at her.
So Thorpedo Anna's mother not being a racing horse didn't bother you?
No, not at all. But she was by a great stallion. Uncle Mo was
the sire was right,
and his injection of speed into the equation was a big deal. Now let's shift. Mystic Dan.
Okay.
Mystic Dan's all Harlan's Holiday Northern Dancer top.
Okay.
And he looks like Harlan's Holiday Northern Dancer.
Yeah.
Through Into Mischief, through
Yeah.
through Golden Sense. And he's actually a contradiction to what I'd normally look at, but I didn't buy him. We bred him.
Ah.
And he's out of his mother, Ma'am, was, I'm drawing a blank on her father. But he was a good horse, but I don't know that he's considered a great influence.
So Ma'am was Mystic Dan's mom.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. That makes sense.
I'm drawing a blank on the broodmare side right now. That's not like me.
Yeah, it isn't like you.
It'll come to me here in a minute. Getting old.
All right, Kenny. So our friends Mandy and Robin, who have the podcast Two Broads at the Track, they wonder why it's that horses breeze for 4 furlongs or 5/8 furlongs, and that is enough to condition them for a race of a mile or longer.
Depends on the gallop to the pole. If you short gallop to the pole, then they don't get as much stamina out of it. But most racehorses really only run the last 3 furlongs in a race, and they gallop and they get in rhythm the first portion of a mile and a 16th, or even a mile and an eighth or mile and a quarter race, and the efficiency of their stride gets them to the half mile pole or the 3 furlong, and then they race home. And so
that's interesting.
Well, for me, like if I'm worried about stamina and is the work going to be strong enough, I tell my riders to let them gallop swift to the half mile pole, and then we work a half a mile. I typically don't work horses further than 5 furlongs. I'll work some 5/8 if I think they need a little something deeper, but a half 5/8 is kind of splitting hairs. And then what's really important is after the wire. They really need to gallop out strong.
Right.
When they gallop out strong, then that really puts the depth of air. You can't. I don't think you could force speed into a horse, but you can control how much stamina and fitness they have.
Okay.
They're either fast or they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I had never realized that. That makes perfect sense as you kind of described that. But all right, they had one more question here from Andy and Robin. We're also wondering why it is that horses in the old days used to race every week, and they could go on for years like that. What has changed since then?
Well, I think two things have changed that are pretty dramatic. When they brought Lasix into the sport back in the 70s, the dehydration factor of the Lasix caused horses to regress when you ran them back quickly. And when a horse drops 20 or 30 pounds of water weight running on Lasix, and then they have to replenish that water weight, then it's very difficult for them to recover, run back quickly, and run back quickly again. And I think trainers got into the habit, because Lasix became more prominent, that they needed to give the horse more time to recover.
Got it.
And then subsequently patterns started to evolve that the more time you gave a horse in between races, the better they would run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were right to some extent. A lot of the horse players put in what they call the bounce. They think a horse is going to bounce. I think they were right in the sense that horse, what they don't think about is that horse was probably a little dehydrated, especially if they utilized a significant amount of Lasix.
Yep.
But if horse has more time, then they tend to run stronger.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think that I know from my perspective, they started printing win percentages. And the racing form started to really focus in on trainer win percentage.
Okay.
And I think win percentage is a wonderful thing sometimes, but it's also a little bit overanalyzed.
Okay.
When a trainer's worried about his win percentage, he tends not to run his horses as much.
Yep.
I think ownership, if I say going into race, okay, we're gonna go ahead and run now. We could use 2 or 3 more works, but we're gonna go ahead and run to get a race under their belt, little learning, what I call a schooling race,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of times I run horses first time out and school them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little dirt in their face, a little inside, outside, come from off the pace, finish fast. But you get beat doing that, which hurts your win percentage. And so if you're not ultra aggressive first time out, it hurts your win percentage. And so trainers, I do think, are much more conscious of their win percentage. I myself, I think maybe I let it go years ago.
Yeah.
I know what's right for my horse and my clients, but not what's right for me.
Right.
Now, there are guys that are brilliant with their win percentage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, could they have started horses more? Could they have maybe explained to an owner, we're gonna run here, but maybe we can't win? I've won some big races at long prices.
Yeah.
Really long prices. And I wouldn't have won those races if I was worried about my win percentage.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So trainers get a little conservative. And even me, sometimes I sit down and go, oh, well, I probably shouldn't run there. And then sometimes you want to experiment with a horse. You might want to put him on the lead, or you might want to take him back, or you might want to, try a different surface.
Mm-hmm.
And to experiment knocks your win percentage down.
Gotcha.
You can't be right all the time.
Gotcha.
But like I said, there are guys. I mean, I think Brad Cox and Chad Brown are have managed their careers as good as anybody.
Sure.
And they focused in on their win percentage, which attracted more clientele.
Yeah.
Which got them better horses.
Yeah.
And so here they are today, 2 of the top trainers in the nation.
Sure.
But there are those that don't care. I mean, I think Billy Mott, I'm probably more like Bill. I think Wayne Lucas is, he's got, excuse the term, balls of steel. He isn't scared to run one when they're doing good.
Right.
And he won the Preakness this year doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
But Wayne doesn't worry about his win percentage.
Yeah.
I don't think Steve Asmussen worries about his win
Right.
percentage. And that does have to do with how you place horses. But if you don't run them more, you run them less and less and less,
Yeah.
I think it takes the enjoyment out of ownership.
What a great answer. All right. Last question. This one's actually mine. You had mentioned something in a prior podcast talking about historical racing, instant racing. What I'd like to ask you here is, in the state of Kentucky, there's been a lot of laws, there's been a lot of politicians trying to get a casino pushed through. Across the river, there is one in Indiana, and it seems like there's a lot of positive tax purposes, a lot of positive state money that comes in via these casinos. It seems like the racing here in Kentucky has kind of stopped some of that from progressing. Tell me why, and give me your opinion on that.
Well, I'm not the right one to ask all that. We probably need Damon Thayer on here for that
Okay.
one. I mean, Damon's he's back to horse racing and just won a really nice award this year. Congratulations, Damon. Hope you're listening. But Damon could really tell you more about that, and that's another someone that would be able to give you a high-level answer. I can't tell you that I follow the politics of the Kentucky legislature, but I know that every decision they make for the benefit of
horse
racing. So,
because that's a huge industry in the state,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you this then: how does the historical racing, so obviously the slots or whatever Churchill Downs has, or the instant racing, how does that benefit trainers?
Well, a percentage of all that money ends up trickling back into the tracks and the purse structure, and you've also got money that comes from advanced deposit wagering bets that there's source market fees that go into the purse structure.
Yep.
And I think once again, the politicians have been very thoughtful, and there's groups that concern themselves with how that money does benefit horses and horse racing. And I think, as we know, their goal is to continue to make the state of Kentucky the core of the horse industry, and they've done a phenomenal job.
They really have.
Yeah, they really have. And there's whether Churchill Downs is taking advantage of that, or Kentucky Downs, and now Turfway and Ellis, they've made racing horses here in the state of Kentucky fantastic. And thank you to all of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Kenny, that's it for today's podcast. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, just been a great year, and have enjoyed it, and hope all you all out there continue to enjoy our work here. We're trying to do something positive. We continue to encourage you to come back with us with whatever questions you've got. We'll try to do our best to answer to them forthright and give you all the information we can. And we really do need to try to get guys like Mark Guilfoyle and Damon Thayer and some others on here. And we're still in our early stages on doing all this. And look, thanks to Teague here. This guy really
appreciate that.
He talked me into doing this. Okay,
That's true.
I want to tell that real quick, because I came in here as a guest of someone else's podcast, and Teague says you ought to do your own.
That's
and I
right.
said, well, I don't really know a whole lot about that, Teague,
Yeah.
but if you'll tell me, and I agreed to do a couple, 3, and
Right.
we'd see how it goes. And I think we're on 15 or 16.
We are, and it's been gangbusters, man.
Yeah.
The numbers are amazing. The listenership's been amazing. We've had all kinds of great positive comments. It's been really good.
Well, and for those out there that have enjoyed it, if you go on the front page of the Horses Now app, you can watch every single episode.
That's right.
The team's done a good job putting them on there, and we really need more people to share that, so that how can we grow this sport? We need to do that by telling others, and if it's someone that doesn't know a lot about thoroughbred racing that wants to really know more, have them dig into the first one and work their way through them.
Right.
Because we're trying to really educate and stay positive on all of it, and at the same time, we want fans to come back to us and tell us what you want to hear.
Well, and credit to you, Kenny. You've been an open book, right? I mean, if you came in here and gave political answers to everything, I don't know that our listeners would be that engaged. But you give the answers straight from the heart, and it is what it is.
It gets me in trouble every day.
I understand it might, but I think that our listeners certainly appreciate it, and it's certainly helping the industry without a doubt.
Well, I enjoy doing it.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Horses Now podcast. Again, hit that subscribe button. Send us your questions. You can make us better by giving us the right questions. And like I said, Kenny's an open book, and he'll answer them.
See you at the races.